I took a poll on Instagram. The poll was for you guys to vote for my next YouTube topic. Majority voted for Bible errors. I would have voted for the other one, but whatever. Then I gave everyone the opportunity to offer up one Bible error each. Majority of those who responded were Muslims. Unsurprisingly, hot topic for them. Most of whom followed the very basic instruction of one each. Some, though, decided to bypass that boundary because apparently they're above the rules. If you're watching, you know who you are. I won't be entertaining your responses. I have zero obligation to respect disrespect. Next time, follow the rules. Moving on, we have 10 Bible errors. Lego. And God said, "Let there be light." Light was created on the first day, but the sun was created on the fourth day. Error? No. The sun is not the only source of light in the universe, especially if we're considering the ethereal beginnings of the physical world. Furthermore, if the text were to have said that the sun was created on the first day, and then the sun was created on the fourth day, that would be a contradiction. But it doesn't, so it's not. Pharaoh or king. There are two potential origins of the word Pharaoh. Some historians believe the word is a compound of sun or sun god and the Pharaoh, the sun or the sun god. According to this argument, the king of Egypt was believed to be the earthly representative of the deities. The title Pharaoh, the sun god, gave the king royal authority, that which was directly derived from the gods. It's possible that the kings of Egypt had this title before Abraham. The sun god was always a major deity in the Egyptian pantheon. The second theory is this. Other historians believe the word is derived from Perau, the great house. According to this argument, the term pharaoh was originally used to refer to the palace, or to the court in which the king lived. But the connotative meaning gradually diverged from the denotative meaning. Denotative? Denotative? And the term pharaoh was used to refer to the government and the king, from the end of the 12th dynasty onwards. The health wish "May it live, prosper, and be in health" was often added when referring to the great house. It appears that the term referred to the palace or to the court of the king. The Bible references the ruler of Egypt during the time of Joseph as Pharaoh. The Bible's use of the term Pharaoh accurately reflects the Egyptian connotative usage of the term. The early kings are often mentioned under the general title Pharaoh, or Pharaoh the king of Egypt. The personal names of the pharaohs appear in the 22nd dynasty, along with the title. The pharaohs of the earlier books of the Bible are not identified by their proper names. These men were not identified by their proper names during these periods. This is also true in the case of the use of the title pharaoh for kings earlier than the 18th dynasty, consistent with Egyptian usage up to the time of the 19th dynasty. If it is an error to refer to the king of Egypt as Pharaoh, the Quran, along with the Bible, is guilty of historical anachronism. However, if the title Pharaoh is derived from the sun god, both the Bible and the Quran use the term correctly, right? Was it one demon-possessed man or two demon-possessed men? Matthew mentions two demon-possessed men. Mark and Luke mention one. Do the gospel writers contradict each other here? How about this? Matthew tells us that there were two demoniacs. Mark and Luke only mention one of the two. That's entirely possible. There is no contradiction. There's only a contradiction if one statement renders the other statement impossible. In such a case, only one or neither of the two can be true. Mark. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. Luke. When Jesus had stepped out on land, there met him a man from the city who had demons. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he had not lived in a house but among the tombs. If Mark and or Luke would have specified one man, while Matthew says, and when he came to the other side, to the country of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men met him, then we'd have a problem. These 2 statements do not contradict. All 3 accounts describe demon possession, the power that Jesus has over the spiritual realm. All 3 tell us that Jesus made a point to travel to that place to save someone from demon possession. And all 3 affirm that there was at least one man plagued by demons. The fact that the 3 accounts differ in some minor detail merely proves that they were written by different authors, each having chosen to focus on a particular aspect of the story. Judas, how'd he die? Did he hang himself? Did he explode? Matthew is the only gospel author to record Judas's death. The account of Judas's death is then given by Luke in Acts, and these 2 accounts are apparently different. Matthew says Judas, having regretted handing over Jesus, committed suicide. Now when Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus had been condemned, he regretted what he had done and returned the 30 silver coins to the chief priests and the elders, saying, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." But they said, "What is that to us? You take care of it yourself." So Judas threw the silver coins into the temple and left. Then he went out and hanged himself. In Acts, Peter narrates Judas's tragic death from a radically different perspective. He doesn't point out the regret as the cause of death. Judas's death, according to Peter, seems to be some kind of an accident. Now this man, Judas, acquired a field with the reward of his unjust deed, and falling head first, he burst open in the middle, and all his intestines gushed out. This became known to all who lived in Jerusalem, so that in their own language they could call that field Hakeldama, field of blood. Let's not read the Bible superficially, shall we not? Did he hang himself? Did he explode? I say both. Bart Ehrman, favoured by Muslims, says, "The 2 reports give different accounts of how Judas died. However mysterious it may be to say he fell headlong and burst open, at least that is not hanging oneself." And they are flat out contradictory on 2 other points, but you didn't ask me about that, so maybe next time. Right. Matthew seems to focus on Judas's suicide. Luke is more interested in the final state of Judas's body. Gross. According to Jewish laws and customs, Jews would have avoided going near his dead body, any dead body, especially that of a traitor, even though they paid him to betray Jesus. We have some medical data that fits what we read in both Matthew and Acts. From the textbook of Forensic Medicine and Toxicology, between 3 and 7 days, ever-increasing pressure of the putrefying gases associated with colliquative changes in the soft tissues may lead to softening of the abnormal parietes, resulting in bursting open the abdomen and thorax. If you ever watched a detective show or anything like that, you'll know about bloated corpses. Apparently it makes for good TV. If someone eventually cut Judas's body down from wherever he hung himself, I say eventually because of the Jewish laws and customs, or if whatever he hung himself on gave way because of his weight, that would explain how the body exploded. Matthew and Luke aren't contradictory, they're complementary. One ties up the loose end of the other. A classical historian wouldn't be troubled by these minor discrepancies. These differences don't undermine their historical value, and each gospel writer's account is consistent with their profession. Matthew, as a tax collector, shows special interest in legal and financial details. Luke is a physician, hence his focus on the state of the body. Jesus' genealogy according to Matthew and to Luke. Do you even care? There are a few typical questions surrounding Jesus' genealogy, and since you didn't give me a specific one, I'll go through the ones I'm aware of. From Abraham to David there is no division, but from David to Jesus the genealogies are totally different, with the exception of 2 names. So while this is a fair thing to question, Muslims and secular readers of the Bible will hastily conclude contradiction. Back up. Every man has 2 genealogies. Hudui. One on his father's side, the other on his mother's. Hence, we may infer that one of the 2 genealogies of Christ is probably that of Joseph, his putative father, the other that of the Virgin Mary, his mother. St. Matthew gives the former, St. Luke gives the latter. There's no contradiction. The most reasonable and evident, and thereby agreed upon explanation is just that. Matthew gives Jesus' genealogy through Joseph. Again, he is very much inclined to the financial, legal details. Luke gives it through Mary. Again, physician, interested in the miraculous birth. Consider their narrations of the virgin birth. Matthew tells the story from Joseph's perspective. Luke tells it from Mary. And throughout the narratives, Luke sets Mary as the primary figure. He specifically states in his genealogy that Jesus was the son, as was supposed, of Joseph. That word supposed is key. Luke names no women in Jesus' genealogy. He does not describe Jesus as the son of Mary, but as the supposed son of Joseph. This is for the sake of sustaining a masculine genealogy. Heli is understood to be the ancestor of Mary, not of Joseph. Joseph is not properly part of the genealogy. Luke uses the word supposed to avoid confusion, for his readers to know that the genealogy is actually of Mary and not of Joseph. The Jerusalem Talmud, a Jewish source, recognizes this. So Luke gives Jesus' genealogy through Mary, Matthew through Joseph. There's a difference in the number of generations. Matthew lists 26 progenitors between David and Jesus. Luke lists 40. I personally didn't find any difficulty with that. Not because I'm biased, but because it's normal, or at least entirely conceivable, that generations in one line propagate more rapidly than in the other. And in Jewish thinking, son might mean grandson, or even more generally, descendant. Like Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. The fact that Matthew lists 3 groups of 14 generations suggests convenience. Some generations may have been omitted. In fact, there's no may about it. It can be shown that Matthew's list has omissions. Jews are known to have done this freely. The purpose of a genealogy was not to account for every single generation. It was to establish the fact of an undoubted succession, including, especially, more prominent ancestors, like David. With 3 groups of 14, you'd expect to find 42 different names, but there are 41. Matthew doesn't give us 42 different names. He gives us 3 groups of 14 generations. David's name concludes the first set and starts the second. He's counted twice. He's given prominence in the genealogy of Jesus, a prominence that emphasizes Jesus' legal right to the Davidic throne through his legal father, Joseph. In the 2 genealogies between David and Jesus, all the names are different except for 2. Shealtiel, and Zerubbabel. How do we account for that? There are 2 issues to cover within this question. First, who was Shealtiel's father? Was it Jeconiah or Neri? Once again, the problem disappears when you understand that 2 genealogies are given. 2 different genealogies, 2 different men. Same name. They both had different fathers. Surprise. And second, which son of Zerubbabel was the ancestor of Jesus? Abiud or Risa? And what about the Zerubbabel in 1st Chronicles? Well, 2 different Shealtiels necessitate 2 different Zerubbabels. So it is no problem that their sons had 2 different names, because they were 2 different people. Matthew tells us that Joseph's father was Jacob. Of course, the Bible records another Jacob who had a son called Joseph. Joseph, son of Jacob, who rose to power in Egypt. We see no need to suggest that these 2 men are the same. So too, we should have no problem with 2 different men named Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel. As for the Zerubbabel named in 1st Chronicles, could easily be a 3rd different man. Again, this causes no problem. There are several Marys mentioned. It was a common name. This Zerubbabel would then be a cousin of the one mentioned in Matthew. Selathiel or Shealtiel is first after the Babylonian captivity in Matthew's genealogy, a point to which Matthew drew our focus. Why? Well, who is Zerubbabel in 1st Chronicles? He led the return from exile, restored the altar and daily worship, rebuilt the temple. He protected the purity of the Lord's work and worship against opposition. He obeyed the Lord. He ensured the daily needs of the Levites who led in worship. The Lord gave him 2 great statements of promise. He was God's chosen servant to restore his people to their land. The legal and biological lines met in this man before they ultimately met in Christ. Perhaps the Lord wants to point to this man, to whom he said, I will make thee as a signet. Fin. Ahaziah's age. Like, at what point? I mean, he's dead now. I assume your question is the same as this guy's. Was he 22 or was he 42 when he became the king of Judah? He was 22. In 2 Kings 8:17, we read that Ahaziah's father, Joram, reigned for 8 years after beginning his reign at 32. So he was 40 when he died. His son, therefore, could not have been 42 when he began his reign. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he began to reign, and Ahaziah was 42 years old when he began to reign. Apart from this minor discrepancy, the texts agree. He reigned 1 year. Athaliah was his mother, who was the granddaughter of Omri. In the original Hebrew, the difference between the 2 ages was represented in 1 letter. The error would have occurred in the copying of that text. This is a copyist error. Simples. Was Mary a virgin, or was she merely a young woman? Now all this was done that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel. That prophet was Isaiah. Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. The argument is that the Hebrew word translated in the King James Version as virgin, Alma, is more correctly translated as young maiden, since Hebrew has a specific word for virgin, Betula. But that doesn't always mean virgin. It usually refers to it. A number of passages indicate that the word does not necessarily mean virgin in the technical sense. For example, Genesis 24 verse 16. The word is used for Rebekah, but the text adds a qualifying clause. No man had known her. The clause would be unnecessary if the word was unambiguous. Rebekah is later referred to as Alma. No qualifying clause necessary. There are times the word is used as an epithet for pagan nations. The Jewish Hebrew English Dictionary defines the word as virgin, young woman, maiden, girl. The meaning is not exclusively virgin. On the other hand, never is Alma used in the Bible where it necessarily means anything other than virgin. Ancient Jewish culture expected an unmarried woman to be a virgin. The Greek Septuagint, a pre-Christian translation made by Jews, translates the word Alma by the word Parthenos. the Greek word that commonly means virgin. A word should be taken in its normal meaning, unless extenuating circumstances dictate otherwise. Pre-Christian Jews understood Alma to mean virgin. The prejudice arose after the debate with Christians became active. Isaiah 7:14 foretells that the woman will be with child. That Alma, will be with child. A condition that naturally denies virginity. However, this passage is a prophecy that classifies the pregnant condition as a sign or miracle given as a pledge of divine presence and interposition. The sign was a miracle given as God's pledge of the future deliverance of Israel, evident from verse 11. Ask a sign for yourself from the Lord your God. Ask it either in the depth or in the height above. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, nor will I test the Lord. To request a purely natural event would not be deemed a test of the Lord. If the Alma conceived by natural means, no miracle. The only way the conception would be a miracle would be for it to be supernatural. Thus, it's appropriate to conclude that the word Alma means virgin in Isaiah and in Matthew. And number 10, 70 or 75. How many members of the house of Jacob went to Egypt? Both passages are correct. Genesis 46 verse 27 and Acts 7 verse 14. The total number of direct descendants that traveled to Egypt with Jacob was 66. Judah was sent on ahead in verse 28. Joseph and his 2 sons were already in Egypt. In verse 27, all the members of the family are included. Joseph, his sons, and Judah, making the total 70. That's referring to the total number of Jacob's family that ended up in Egypt, not just those that traveled with him to Egypt. In the older Septuagint and the Dead Sea Scroll manuscripts, the number given in verse 27 is 75, because they also include Joseph's 3 grandsons and 2 great-grandsons. And in the Septuagint version, their names are listed in Genesis 46:20. Therefore, the Acts 7:14 quotation of Stephen's speech before his martyrdom is correct because he was quoting from the Septuagint. When we look at the accusations Muslims tend to make of contradictions, errors in the Bible, we find that many, if not all, of these errors are either copyist mistakes or misunderstandings of context. No well-attested variation in the manuscript copies alter any doctrine of the Bible. Enough.